In this video, we're going to talk about 5 companies that were launched by billionaires that failed to take off. These billionaires are the founders and CEOs of massive global empires, but they've also had their share of problems, with some failing to get off the ground, some crashing and burning in spectacular fashion, and in one case, we have a business the founder refuses to even acknowledge anymore. So let's do a deep dive and find out why they started the companies, how they launched it to market, and how the public reacted. And more importantly, we're going to talk about why these companies failed and how the billionaires reacted to those failures. So first up, we have Traf-O-Data. A lot of people might not be familiar with the company, but it was launched by arguably one of the most well-known billionaires in the world, Bill Gates. While Bill Gates is known as the founder of Microsoft today, it wasn't the first company that he created. You see, Gates' first foray into the tech industry was a company that he founded in 1970 called Traf-O-Data. The 17-year-old Gates started the company with his childhood friend Paul Allen, who would later go on to co-found Microsoft with him, as well as an engineering student from the University of Washington called Paul Gilbert. Now, the goal of the company was to provide data on road traffic, and they did so by compiling lots of raw data about city traffic, creating their own databases, and then selling that data to various municipalities, who could then use that data to build better traffic models for their cities. And this was particularly true in Washington. Gates hired students at Lakeside School to receive the raw data, and then he paid them 50 cents to copy that data onto computer cards. Later on, the partners built a special computer to read that data, which cost them $360, or the equivalent of $2,300 in today's money. That's a lot of money for a little thing, Gates reportedly said at the time. Either way, Gates and his partners offered their services for $2 a day, and eventually expanded their service to small counties near Seattle, and even a district in British Columbia. According to Allen, they were, quote, flushed with the first successes of entrepreneurship, and had grandiose dreams of money coming their way. The company reportedly earned as much as $20,000 in its heyday. However, just as the company grew, disaster struck. Washington and other states started offering the same service completely free of charge, and their business quickly dried up. By the time the company closed down in 1980, they had lost $3,400, or a little over $10,000 in today's money. Failure wasn't going to keep the young Gates down for long, and the valuable lessons that he learnt from this experience, particularly on how to find elements of success within a failed venture, gave him the foothold he needed for future successes. The initial failure laid the foundation for Microsoft. You see, Gates and Allen acquired a deep understanding of the business world and how to write good code, and they applied these lessons into the fledgling Microsoft company. The rest, as they say, is history. Now, let's move on from Bill Gates to another name that's synonymous with entertainment, Walt Disney. Walt Disney, of course, is immortalised by a global empire that encompasses movies, television shows, and theme parks around the world. However, Disney's magical world had its roots in a small animation studio in Kansas City, Missouri. In 1921, Disney, who was a young animator at the time, was hired to create 12 animated cartoons by a Kansas City theatre manager named Milton Feld. The following year, Disney founded Laugh-O-Gram Studio with Ub Iwerks, using $15,000 that the pair had raised from local investors. His first order also came from Feld, who commissioned a weekly 1-minute reel that featured local news and public service announcements. In fact, these reels were so successful that Disney was quickly asked to double his output from 1 to 2 reels a week. And to help with this added workload, Disney put out an ad in the local paper offering free lessons to anyone wanting to learn how to animate characters. In this way, eventually Disney was able to create a team of animators, and they set out to create their first real animated film called Little Red Riding Hood. Disney filmed it using a single hand-cranked camera. To attract more investors, Feld sent out copies of the film to all the national distributors, all of whom turned down the offer to work with Disney's new company. The only offer they received was from a small and relatively unknown company called Pictorial Clubs, who offered $11,000 for 6 complete animated shorts. However, Disney only received $100 from the company before it went bankrupt and closed down. By the end of 1922, Laugh-O-Grams was struggling, and Disney was living in his office and taking baths once a week at Union Station. It was only through the commission of a Kansas City dentist named Thomas McCrum that Disney was saved from total failure. McCrum paid Disney $500 for a short film called Tommy Tucker's Tooth, a short that showed the merits of brushing your teeth. In 1923, Laugh-O-Grams declared bankruptcy, and Disney sold his movie camera, and using the proceeds and the little that he'd earned from the commission from McCrum, he bought a one-way train ticket to Hollywood. It was during Disney's time at Laugh-O-Gram that he got the inspiration to make his most famous character, Mickey Mouse. According to Disney, there was one particularly tame mouse that would hang around his waste paper basket when he worked alone late at night, and he developed an affection for the small creature. And this was a valuable experience for Disney because it taught him that inspiration can come from anywhere. The source of a life-changing idea can be something as small as a mouse. Speaking of inspiration, let's now talk about one of the most inspiring entrepreneurs out there, Mark Cuban. Cuban is the epitome of the American dream, a guy who started out from nothing and worked his way up. Today, Cuban is worth $1.4 billion. He owns his own NBA franchise and is a regular cast member of one of the most popular shows on TV, Shark Tank. However, before he became the CEO of some of the biggest companies in the world, Cuban tried to start a company that failed almost immediately, a powdered milk company. In fact, the failure was so swift that the company never even got a name, and he doesn't even list it among his history of companies. Cuban's inspiration for starting the powdered milk company was due to an ad that he'd seen on TV. To the young and inexperienced entrepreneur, it sounded like a killer business because it was cheap to produce, it was quick to make, and everyone wanted milk. As it turned out, his instincts were completely wrong, and his only customers were his parents. Cuban quickly moved on from his failed milk business and focused on other endeavours that would make their way into his portfolio, like his first real company, Micro Solutions. Today, Cuban would share his takeaway from the experience in one simple line: it doesn't matter how many times you fail, you only have to be right once. Now, while Mark Cuban might be the most entertaining figure on Shark Tank, he's not the wealthiest. That distinction goes to the next billionaire on this list, Richard Branson. Branson is the founder of the Virgin Group, a multi-billion-dollar business that spans across many industries, from travel and hotels to tech, health, and financial services. However, while Branson does have many successes to his name, he also has several failures, with one of the most memorable being Virgin Cola. Virgin Cola had an almost laughable simple beginning. In 1994, an unknown soda maker had Branson blind taste test his own recipe, alongside Coke and Pepsi. Branson reportedly liked the homemade recipe best. In fact, he liked it so much that he decided he'd use that recipe to, quote, try to topple Coke. And true to his flamboyant style, Branson launched Virgin Cola with a unique and eye-catching stunt. His team drove a Sherman tank through Times Square, crushing a wall of Coca-Cola cans. The stunt worked, and during the height of its popularity, Virgin Cola earned gross profits of around $5.3 million, outselling both Coke and Pepsi in the first 2 years. But Branson wasn't prepared for Coke's response. At first, it seemed like everything was going well. Virgin Cola was disappearing off the shelves. But Branson later learned that it wasn't because of customer purchases, but rather because Coke representatives had strong-armed retailers into not selling the Virgin brand. Branson even described it as, quote, a very systematic kneecapping job. By the time Coke was done, Virgin Cola's profits had fallen to $3.3 million, with sales declining steadily. Branson ultimately decided to pull the plug on Virgin Cola when it was the top-selling soda in Bangladesh, but nowhere else, and it halted production in 2012. According to Branson, he learned to only go into businesses where he was, quote, palpably better than all the competition. And while he was going to fight tooth and nail to make something succeed, the moment he realised that it wasn't succeeding, he was ready to move on to the next venture. And this was a valuable lesson, because this taught Branson when to fight and when to move on. No matter how much time and effort he poured into an opportunity, sometimes it was best just to cut his losses. According to Branson, moving forward is one of the best things a good entrepreneur can do even after they've failed. While we're on the subject of moving forward, let's talk about the last entrepreneur on this list, Woodman. You might not be familiar with his name, but you probably know his most famous product, the GoPro, which is the go-to action camera for just about every outdoor adventurer and adrenaline junkie. Before Woodman created the GoPro, he tried his hand at internet startups. After he graduated from college, he launched an internet gaming site called Funbug in 1999. The site allowed users to play games and win cash prizes using a points program. The business plan was that users could also collect points, known as Funbugs, by playing games and then use these points to shop at affiliated client sites. They could also collect points by referring others, completing surveys, or joining email lists. And to make the business model even more attractive, Woodman planned to offer a virtual sweepstake, with each Funbug acting like an entry. The more Funbugs you had, the more chances you had of winning. On paper, it seemed like a surefire win. Since this was before the dot-com bubble had burst, investors practically begged Woodman to take their money, and he was able to raise almost $4 million in capital from various investors. While Woodman was in the process of creating his team, the dot-com bubble burst, and his site hadn't even launched, which meant nothing ever came of the idea. It was a failure of epic proportions. $4 million down the drain and lots of people laughing at him. In fact, the company even briefly featured on company.com, a now defunct website that showcased all the biggest dot-com busts. After his failure, Woodman went to Australia on a surfing trip to clear his head. You see, he loved surfing and he wanted to be immersed in his passions and interests. And that's where he got the idea to create the GoPro, because he wanted a handheld camera that would capture his experience. You see, Woodman's huge GoPro empire stemmed from him following his passion. Yes, it might sound a bit cliched and corny, but when you think about it, passion has always been and always will be one of the biggest driving forces for the most successful entrepreneurs. Woodman got his start from following his passion for travel, Gates followed his passion for tech, Cuban followed his passion for entrepreneurship, Branson followed his passion for trying new things, and of course, Disney followed his passion for animation. And listen, regardless of where you are right now on your path to billions, the goal for many aspiring entrepreneurs is to have their very own private island getaway so that they can jet off whenever they fancy a break. Branson has one, Larry Ellison has one, and Gates, well, you'll just have to find out what happened to his island. If you haven't already watched our video about billionaires with the best private islands, click here to watch that video now. If you enjoyed this video, please show your support by clicking on the subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our billionaire videos. Thanks for watching, catch you on the next video.